Tipp today in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp Today, 1800 938 007. That's a free phone number, it won't cost you to make a call, and Leanne is producing today. Coming up on the show this morning, Deputy Michael Murphy will join me in a few moments' time on yesterday's ruling on Dundrum House and indeed the implications of that decision as well. The shock erection of a mast in Cahir, we'll talk about that. Soc Dems Deputy Aidan Farrelly pushes for the lowering of the voting age to 16. I'll chat to him. Our legal eagle John Lynch will talk to us today about defamation. Dana will chat to me about a re-release indeed of one of her classic songs. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Can I start with some birthday wishes though? Because this is lovely. It says, good morning. It would be great if Fran Curry could say a happy birthday to my father Michael Flood in Kilfeacle, who celebrates his 77th birthday today. He listens to Fran's show every day. The birthday greetings coming from his son David, who unfortunately can't be there today, as David is currently living in lovely Helsinki in Finland. Mila Mahagut, says David. Well, you're very welcome indeed, David, and a big happy birthday to your dad, Michael, and I hope he's spoilt rotten today, and I'm delighted he listens to the show every day. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers today. The Irish Times and their lead story: the Peter McVerry Trust has written down the value of its 162 million property portfolio by 23 million after uncovering major flaws in its financial accounts. Also on the Times today, we're reading that the coalition is considering longer waiting times for citizenship for those with refugee status and tighter rules indeed on family reunification for migrants. And also reading on the Times today, a dedicated team of senior detectives in the Police Service of Northern Ireland is to lead a criminal investigation into abuse allegations within the Presbyterian Church of Ireland. It has emerged. And also that story, Gardaí in Cork last night investigating a stabbing incident that left a couple believed to be in their 70s in a critical condition in hospital, and I think one of them has died since. In fact, the Irish Independent and the lead story on the Indo today: the HSE is on course to spend more than €720 million hiring agency workers this year, while failing to fill more than 3,700 staff jobs for which it has funding. The Irish Examiner and their lead story today is a rather concerning one indeed. Increasingly desperate middle-income families and mortgage holders are seeking help from the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, despite feeling ashamed at being unable to make ends meet as the cost of living crisis just worsens. And Troy Parrott's proud grandmother said she is over the moon after his historic hat-trick in Hungary yesterday. And lovely pictures of her right across the newspapers, in fact, today. Also reading on the Examiner that nearly half of all elderly patients are being treated outside the HSE's own targeted timeframes for emergency departments. And finally, a look at the Irish Daily Mail and the main story on the Mail today: more than 1.1 billion has been spent on accommodating asylum seekers and Ukrainian refugees in the first 3 quarters of this year. New figures are revealing an analysis by the Mail of a database compiled by Fianna Fáil TD Albert Dolan shows that the state has spent almost 7 billion accommodating asylum seekers and Ukrainian refugees since 2012. So that's what's making headlines today. If you'd like to make comment on any of that, we'd be glad to hear from you. 083 311 3311 for text and a WhatsApp. And of course, you can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Now, the government is being called upon to immediately rescind the iPass accommodation contract for Dundrum House Hotel after yesterday's High Court decision that quashed the Section 5 planning exemption granted by Tipperary County Council. I'm joined now by Tipperary Fine Gael Deputy Michael Murphy. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, Fran.
Just for clarity, Michael, can you tell us what exactly happened yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely, Fran. But first of all, can you just allow me just express my deepest sympathies to the families and friends of the 5 lives lost so tragically in the recent crash. Such a heartbreaking loss, and felt right across the community of Clonmel for obvious reasons. We go back to August 2023, but look, I'm sure their grief is unimaginable, and my thoughts and prayers are with those that are mourning, and may they find the strength and comfort in the difficult days ahead. Yeah, so interesting developments, I would say key developments yesterday in the High Court, Fran, and I think one needs to go back to the earlier part of this year when the owners of Dundrum House Hotel applied for a Section 5 declaration to Tipperary County Council. In essence, this is a declaration stating that the use of Dundrum House Hotel as an IPAS centre is exempted development. And bear in mind then, Fran, that any owner of a property cannot go to the department with a property, as a kind of an expression of interest as an IPAS centre without this Section 5. I and others in particular, and I want to give credit to everybody involved in Dundrum Heritage, had serious questions about this Section 5 simply because there is unauthorised development on the site of Dundrum House Hotel, and in particular I'm referring to an unauthorised wastewater treatment system. So Dundrum Heritage took a case to the High Court, sought a judicial review. Subsequently, Tipperary County Council decided not to contest those hearings, and indeed yesterday Dundrum Heritage were successful. That Section 5 was quashed. So now that brings into question the very contract itself that the Department of Justice entered into with the owners of Dundrum House Hotel.
So where are we now then, Michael?
That's a good question. I suppose the next steps really, I suppose there's 2 actors in terms of the next steps. First of all, Tipperary County Council, and I've no doubt that my colleagues or my former colleagues across Tipperary County Council will be calling on the local authority to immediately issue enforcement notices based on yesterday's decision. In terms of the department, I'll be very honest, friend, we met last night, myself and others, along with Dundrum Heritage Group. We've put together correspondence, a number of parliamentary questions to the Minister for Justice, calling for the immediate cessation, cancelling of this contract, the winding down of this contract. This order quashing this Section 5 declaration, I think it's very clear now, it renders the current use of the site as an IPAS centre just renders it null and void. It no longer possesses the requisite planning permission to operate as an IPAS centre. That's my interpretation of the ruling yesterday. And again, it calls into question what we've all been calling out for, and that's the lack of transparency, the lack of accountability, the lack of due diligence. My issue is not with IPAS. My issue is with the use of taxpayers' money entering into a contract with a company that was only incorporated earlier on this year, based in Spain, I believe, no track record in the provision of accommodation. And the background to all of this, of course, is the disaster it is for Dundrum, the wider Tipperary area. From a socio-economic tourism perspective, the hotel is now closed, the golf course is closed, the gym is closed, the swimming pool is closed, the restaurant and bar are shut, and 48 jobs have been lost locally. There are many other contracts for IPAS and Ukrainians around Tipperary, Fran. I've called out none of those, but there are a specific set of circumstances regarding Dundrum that I feel extremely strongly about, and I think now is the time, and I'm sure myself, Deputy Healy, Deputy McGrath will be calling out the Minister for Justice this week at the earliest opportunity.
So what I'm reading into, essentially the IPAS that are in there at the moment will have to leave. It's that simple, is it?
Yes, well, of course, we've asked for copies of the contract, the actual, I don't think any Oireachtas members have seen a physical IPAS contract between the department and an accommodation provider. But we all know, in particular with other locations, that in order to enter into a contract, the department have sought a Section 5 declaration. I can only assume from that, Fran, that a Section 5 declaration is a key component of any contract. What we have here is an IPAS centre, a multi-million euro contract on a site that is not authorised, doesn't have the planning authorisation for the use. And I and other public representatives are well aware, in terms of, small unauthorised developments, the extent to which the local authority and indeed the higher courts come after individuals. It's the same must apply now to Dundrum House Hotel. And of course, the ultimate gain here, or the ultimate goal here, is to find somebody to take ownership of the property and return it to its proper use, a use that's been woven into the community over many, many decades and indeed centuries.
And that decision yesterday, Michael, because I'm a little bit confused, does that have jurisdiction over a recent submission by the liquidator for a fresh application for a Section 5 for Dundrum House?
Well, first of all, no, you're absolutely right, Francois. A new application has been made that was lodged with Tipperary County Council. And as you know, Tipperary County Council have sent that forward to the board on Board Pleanála. And on Board Pleanála will not adjudicate. I think I checked the On Board Pleanála website the day before yesterday, and I think it's at the earliest a date in March. I wouldn't be surprised if it extends beyond that because it's so complex. But right now, as I'm talking to you, there is no Section 5 declaration in place with regard to Dundrum House Hotel. Yes, there's a new application in, but right now, as I'm talking to you, there is no Section 5 declaration in place and not likely to be in place until the earliest of March. And we can't preempt what the board will decide. My view is very clear. There is unauthorised development on the site, and as such, you cannot grant a Section 5. But look, ultimately the board, and I've no doubt that possible decision either way by the board in March will be challenged. But between now and next March, there is no Section 5 in place.
And while that decision is pending, Michael, is it possible that the people could stay there?
That's a good question. I can't see, it's either authorised for use
or it's not
unauthorised.
Right.
And I think it's very clear, the first question I'll be asking the Minister, and I've tabled it, I submitted it yesterday, is to ask the Minister for Justice the immediate status of the IPAS contract for Dundrum House Hotel, if he acknowledges the High Court order quashing the Section 5, rendering the current use of the site as unauthorised development under the Planning and Development Act, and if he will instruct his department to terminate the contract immediately, given the facility no longer possesses the requisite planning permission to operate as an IPAS centre. And that was submitted in writing to the Minister yesterday, and I will share that response with you. And that response has to come, I think, within the next 7 days.
Now, whatever the outcome next year of that new submission, Michael, Dundrum House is under a liquidator at the moment. So it's not so simple that it's going to suddenly become the Dundrum House that we all remember again.
Certainly not, Franny. You're right, and there's so many layers of complexity. And would you believe ownership issues regarding Dundrum House Hotel is again before the High Court today, involving individuals that are supposedly associated with the company in whose name the contract is, a company called Mast. That's before the High Court again today. Yes, there are so many layers of complexity here, and the future, no doubt, remains very much uncertain. But only one can hope that somebody will step in, purchase it's a fantastic site, great history, as I said, a fantastic parkland, golf course, one of the best in the country. And I do want to acknowledge members, volunteers associated with that golf course, officers that are still maintaining that course without any financial reward. I met them last week in Tipperary Civic Offices. We're working on a plan, engaging with the liquidator to keep that golf course going. As I said, one of the best in the country. Not to mention the swimming pool, the restaurant, the bar. Look, I think one step at a time, Fran, and it's important that we all work together. And I think all Oireachtas members, many councillors, everybody working together, Dundrum Heritage, the people of Dundrum, the community of Dundrum, the great community of Dundrum. And look, we'll get there, but it's going to take time, but it's very complex.
I saw that you raised in the Dáil, Michael, about the provision of Gardaí to, particularly, I suppose, in your case, to South Tipp. And I'm sure you're aware over the last few days we've been speaking about antisocial behaviour. There's that very unfortunate video that's doing the rounds now of somebody helping another man to shoot up on the main guard in Clonmel. You made the point that over 4 allocations we got 4 Gardaí to the area, but you said with people transferring and the like, it means we have less Gardaí now than we would have had a year ago.
I made a slight error in my intervention. That was the first 3 allocations of this year. Clonmel received 4 additional Gardaí, but unfortunately, I think between 5 and 6 transferred out. Of course, I raised it in the Dáil because, look, that video, shocked me, but, again, not surprising. And I'm not unaware of the antisocial behaviour, the drug dealing, all the other activities that are happening in our town centre. The only way to deal with that is more Gardaí, and I want to acknowledge, I know the superintendent is launching a plan for the Christmas period, similar to last year as well. But look, he needs additional Gardaí. I was unequivocal in my intervention last week. Like, it's the metropolitan cities that are getting all the allocations, but unfortunately, Fran, law and order is not confined to our cities. It's in every town and village in Ireland, including all towns, not just Clonmel, Tipperary, Cashel, Cahir, Carrick-on-Suir, Feather, but Clonmel is particularly challenged at the moment. Now, I did speak to the superintendent, and he has indicated to me that yes, we got 1 additional Gardaí, but there is a possibility now, would you believe it, Fran, that 2 additional Gardaí are transferring, and I saw the transfer to Clonmel, and he's also got a number of probationary Gardaí. So it's small steps, but again, it's important that all the Oireachtas members, we work together, we get the Garda resources for all the key towns and villages across. But yes, that video shocked me to the core. But I mean, not surprising. I heard your interview with the Councillor Malloy yesterday.
Yeah, when you have Father Michael Toomey, though, coming out and telling me that he witnesses this kind of, I mean, we call it antisocial behaviour, but it's criminal behaviour, to be honest. And he was also reflecting what he's hearing from his flock, and they're telling him they feel afraid in Clonmel, and that's really unfortunate, isn't it?
Very unfortunate, Fran, and it hurts me deeply because I'm, like many others and many of your listeners, and like Father Toomey as well, deeply proud of Clonmel, and I want to acknowledge a lot of positive work he did as well. But I think what we need is additional Gardaí, and I'm steadfast, Fran, absolutely steadfast in my determination to speak out, to get those additional Gardaí for all our key towns across Tipperary. Like, imagine, Tipperary got 1 additional guard, and that came to Clonmel out of, I think, was it 194 passed out in Clonmel, or sorry, in Templemore. I think 43 of which I think went to Cork. I was very disheartened. Was it Donald did an interview with the Commissioner, and I think reference was made to my intervention, but the Commissioner referred to every other Oireachtas member looking for the same, but that he was prioritising the metropolitan cities first. But look, there is a good pipeline coming out. We had, I think, record numbers enrolling in Templemore, and one can only hope that Tipperary Clare Division first and foremost, but South Tipperary will get its fair share of that particular allocation. Were
you satisfied with the Taoiseach's answer to you, though, and telling you that the distribution of Gardaí is a matter for the Garda Commissioner, as if the Department of Justice of the government has no part to play in this, Michael?
Yeah, I think, there was a wider context. He also said, though, that he took on board that he would speak to the Minister for Justice for me, and look, I've relayed my own feelings directly to the Assistant Commissioner, the Chief Superintendent, the Superintendent, and I continue to do that. And I want to be fair, I think the other Oireachtas members are speaking in the Chamber on that as well, Fran.
Many people of the opinion at this point that the amalgamation of Tipperary and Clare together with that HQ in Ennis from a Garda point of view, that's just not working, Michael. Would you go so far as to say that?
I would agree. I only hope, Fran, and as you know, construction is imminent on the new South Tipperary Garda HQ for Clonmel, and I hope that will really make a difference to the policing across South Tipperary. Yeah, but the centralisation, we've only, I think, 1 chief superintendent. Is it 2 chief superintendents for the entire Clare Tipperary division? It hasn't worked. Unfortunately, though, that is a matter for the Garda Commissioner. I think we're going to have to live with it, but I do hope that the new HQ based on the Kick and Barracks Plaza will make a difference in that regard, Fran.
Can we leave with some good news, Michael, which is Tipperary Racecourse and that investment there?
Yeah, I hope catalyst for further investment in South Tipperary, Fran. But yeah, look, it's great news, great for everybody. First of all, associated with Tipperary Racecourse, the general manager, the management, the board of directors, I think under the chairmanship of Maurice Maloney. There was a project team involved, all volunteers, but the wider racing industry as well. Even at grassroots level, it's a huge boost. But crucially, Fran, a great boost for Tipperary town and the wider region. There's obvious, economic, social, sporting benefits from this investment of over 32 million euros. Can you imagine the knock-on effect for the hospitality sector alone? It's a shovel-ready project, which is fantastic. HRI have confirmed the contractor is in place. There'll be boots on the ground in the first quarter of next year, and we'll have a winter racing calendar on an all-weather track in the winter of 2027. And it's just a great news story. But for me, Fran, I hope it's a catalyst for further investment across South Tipperary.
Interesting question for you, Michael, in from one of our listeners, following up on what we were speaking about earlier on, which was just that open drug taking in Clonmel. Listener wondering, would you look at a medically supervised injection facility like they have in Dublin, in Merchants Quay there in Dublin? Would something like that be worth looking at, do you think?
Look, I'm not qualified to say that yes or no, Fran. Obviously, look, of course, it's something that needs to be considered. I have to find out, first of all, the extent of how well that particular pilot project is working in Merchants Quay. I know there's a plan for one in Cork as well. I wouldn't commit. First of all, look, there's people more qualified than me to confirm whether such a facility is of benefit. What I think first and foremost we need is not the victims, but the individuals that are trafficking these illegal substances. And again, it comes back to policing and an effective policing at the local level, and that's why I continue to champion.
And again, whenever I talk about this, Michael, people around to us to say the dogs in the streets know where this is going on, who's taking part in it, and again, they can't understand why there's not an immediate response from the Gardaí. Can you understand their frustration? I'm sure you're hearing it all the time, are you?
Yeah, and I'm on that same street most weekends.
Yeah.
I walked the entirety of, well, not the entirety, but the entirety of the prime retail area on Sunday afternoon, and indeed a very happy Sunday afternoon after that great Irish victory. But look, I see it myself, Fran. I do what I always do. If I see something, I report it to An Garda Síochána. There's no question. Look, we have a very good superintendent. I'm not too sure whether he's been on your show.
He hasn't actually, no.
Yeah, and I have. I think it would be very helpful if he did, Fran, and it's something I've suggested to him. But look, he's a great superintendent. He's very committed. He's very committed to community policing. He needs the resources. He has one additional guard coming in, a number of probationary guards, 2 transferring in, and I hope they'll make a difference. But yes, I see it firsthand myself, Fran. I'm very proud of Clonmel. It hurts me deeply, but I continue to work with local Gardaí in terms of tackling these issues.
Right. Well, we've invited him on, but I understand they're meeting him towards the end of the week, so hopefully we might have something from him next week.
I suggested that he might meet you for a cup of coffee, and I'm glad that's it happening, Fran.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for talking to us today. Thank you and good morning to you. That's Deputy Michael Murphy speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Hook On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Hook On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Yeah, listen around to say the addicts are the victims here, Fran. The pushers are the ones to be targeted. Please get it right. Yeah, there's an element of truth to that, even though I think the real victims are the elderly people who are fearful to go around the town. I think the victims are the young people who might have to witness this sort of activity around the town. And, do you let the addicts off scot-free as well? I mean, if somebody's an alcoholic and they're driving a car drunk and they're pulled up by the Gardaí, they're brought before the law, so I'm not sure is addiction a complete excuse. Anyway, it's a big conversation, I'm sure, and we will get back to it. Residents of the Birchdale housing estate in Cahir were left rather shocked last week by the sudden erection of a huge tower very close to their homes. Councillor Maureen McGrath joins me now. Good morning to you, Maureen.
Good morning, Fran, and to all your listeners.
And good to talk to you today. Will you tell me what happened at the Birchdale housing estate, in fact, behind it there? I think, is it on Irish Rail land?
Exactly. So I suppose it's not only the Birchdale housing development that have been surprised by this, but as you will know, the train station in Cahir backs onto a number of housing developments, including Birchdale, College Court, Manali Gardens and others. And I suppose it was brought to my attention last Thursday afternoon when residents there literally woke up, looked out their window, and a massive crane was outside their kitchen windows, erecting an unauthorised mast. Now, I suppose this was a shock to anybody that's seen it because of a total lack of any forewarning or a planning application, and also due to the height of it, because it is much taller.
It's
than
huge,
a
isn't it?
mast.
Absolutely huge. I'm just looking at a photograph here, Maureen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I suppose my first concern is, in recent years, there has been an exemption in planning laws to allow for masts under a certain height to be put up outside of planning permission. And that's a mast of under 12 metres. And a lot of the telecommunications companies, I suppose, use this now as a trick to circumvent the planning process. But even having seen the pictures while it was being built, it was pretty obvious that this looks to be more than 12 metres, and I suppose as a result of residents getting in touch with myself and Deputy McGrath, we contacted the planning department about it, because this is, a couple of feet from some people's back gardens, really, really intrusive structure into some people's homes,
Whose mast is it, Maureen? Who owns this mast?
Yeah, so the Planning Authority did an investigation of the site yesterday, and it is our understanding that Irish Rail themselves do own it. And look, I suppose, don't get me wrong, we all understand the need for, infrastructural improvements in telecommunications, and we all use our phones, internet, and we all demand such. But, having such a disregard for the planning process, or trying to do this in a way that gives no forewarning to residents about the impact that it will have, on the residential amenity, it's just really unfair. And the understanding is it belongs to Irish Rail, that it's 19 to 20 metres high, and as well as it being outside of the exemption for planning permission, the structure itself is within the confines of a protected structure, because the Cahir Railway Station is a protected structure. It's on the same curtilage. As well as that, it's right on the boundary of the ACA, the Architectural Conservation Area within Cahir Town, which is, of course, a heritage town. So there's a number of reasons here why I suppose there's no reason whoever put this up, whatever company it was, be it Irish Rail or, a subcontractor who have contracted to rent the space off them, wouldn't be aware of those planning restrictions or the requirement and obligation that is on them to seek planning permission. And I suppose, look, I don't want to get into a whole NIMBYism, not in my backyard debate, but this is just in the centre of town. There's a lot of masts in this wider area as it stands, and to have no forewarning at all was just really disappointing and shouldn't be allowed. So I understand there will be enforcement proceedings, initiated now by Tipperary County Council as well.
Have we any idea what will be on this mast? Is this a commercial decision by Irish Rail to say we're going to put up this mast and then we will rent out access to it? Is that the way that works, Maureen?
It could well be, and you see, I suppose with a lot of these masts, and we see this debate come up in many towns and villages when a planning application goes in. But in the absence of that, we really just don't know. Oftentimes, a company would erect a mast and then, I suppose, rent or erect the structure and rent the masts off it, in a commercial entity. But right now, we really don't know, and I suppose that's going to have to be ascertained throughout the enforcement proceedings. And I suppose, or I'd expect that there will be a retention planning application, which will then give residents an opportunity to put in their submissions, their observations or objections about the structure. But, I suppose you were talking earlier about the Section 5 exemption that was in place for Dundrum House, which is now being quashed. We talk all the time about planning exemptions for IPAS or for some people and for big companies like this, but the ordinary person will nearly always have to apply for planning permission. And, when I think of the unfairness in the planning system, some people, just turn a blind eye and get away with things. And then you see the likes of, our friend Sean Meehan out in New Inn, who is really being crucified by the planning process and for not having followed the proper procedures.
It's no wonder people are so frustrated by this. I didn't realise that exemption was there under the planning law, Maureen.
Yeah, and it only came to my attention last, I would say May, Fran, when a similar action kind of started in Cahir village. There was a concrete pavement put down, or base put down for what we understood was going to be a mast, again outside of planning permission. And when this was highlighted, the concerns of the residents in Cahir village was highlighted to the planning authority. We were informed that there is in fact an exemption, which is totally unfair. But what was the saving grace, I suppose, in this regard was that it was within the ACA, the Area of Architectural Heritage in Cahir village. So it therefore wasn't exempt. So there's a number of caveats, I suppose, to the exemption. And big companies, be it Irish Rail or whatever company are working here, have to know their duties and obligations when it comes to planning laws. And I think maybe it's an opportunity for them to say, oh, look, we'll transit it and see how we get on. And look, that's just not fair. When you look out of the back windows, and I was in some of the homes over the weekend, and look out their back windows, like, you can't but say that this is a really intrusive structure inside on their home. And
it's huge. I can't get over the size of it. It's absolutely huge, And you reckon it's beyond that planning exemption height, is it?
I do. I spoke to the planning officer who investigated at the site there yesterday evening, and without being able to get a full grasp of it, and in comparison to other masts that are exempt, it was clear that this looks to be 19 to 20 metres high when the exemption is for 12 metres. So, a total flout of an exemption as well. But I suppose maybe just hoping that, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. I know it's a way that people work in the planning system sometimes, but in this instance, when it's a large infrastructure company, I don't think that they should be working in this way.
All right, Maureen, we'll see what happens where that's concerned. Good to talk to you today, and thank you for your time. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Thank you, Fran.
Councillor Maureen McGrath speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
And you're very welcome back. That person who was on to us earlier on to say that the addicts are the victims here and the pushers are the ones to be targeted was back to me to say, with respect to you, the addicts need the most help here. Getting guards in because of that video is not the main reason to deploy them. That's only sweeping the problem under the carpet. Get them in and get the pushers out. Don't criminalise the addicts, says this listener. Thank you for that. You might like to join us on the programme. We'd love to chat to you about those opinions because they're very interesting. Somebody else telling me that the councillors need to do something about travel chaos in Cahir. I presume there should be traffic chaos in Cahir every single day, and our councillors aren't saying a word about this. Now, on yesterday's programme, the business owner, Michael Marr, discussed his frustration after frequent water outages in Clonmel. Well, that and some other stuff as well. But Jason Devlin is founder of the Tipperary Town Water Crisis Action Group and joins me now. Good morning to you, Jason.
Good morning, Fran. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Lovely to talk to you. You set up this particular group. You said you were at your wit's end, Jason. Will you tell me about that?
Yeah, so the group only set up the group about, I suppose it's been only about 3 weeks. I have had, over the last 3 years since we moved to Tipperary, or near to Tipperary town, a personal record of in and around 720 hours without water over the last 3 years. So that's almost 30 full 24-hour days. We're constantly plagued by it. It's just and it always seems to happen on the weekend when you're when you're wanting to kind of get things done around the house and what have you. So we're at a point where we've all made complaints. We've all reached out to the councillors. We've done what we can do, and there's just nowhere else for us to go. So I set the group up. It's almost at 250 members, and it's only been 3 weeks, so it just shows how big the issue is in the area.
And have you been getting any answers, Jason, as to why these outages are happening, or is it a whole mixture of things? For instance, is there investment in infrastructure going on that might cause these outages because of works and the like, or do you get any answers?
So when we call, usually when there's an outage, I always encourage everyone to report it, obviously, because, a lot of the time Irish Water actually don't know there's a problem. So we pick up the phone, usually it's first thing in the morning, 6 o'clock, there's no water. We pick up the phone, we ring in, and they say, we actually don't know what the issue is. We'll send someone out, and they give you a reference number. And then about 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, maybe you'll get a text saying, unplanned works, there's an outage, there's a burst pipe, whatever the case may be, and then they give you kind of a vague time frame, and sometimes then it'll update later on in the day. So really we don't get any proper communication. There's no full information as to what the problem is with our system. They responded to an official complaint that I put in, which took them over a month to come back with proper, with a proper answer. And this was also put through by Seamus Healy TD as well. And the response that we got was essentially they've admitted that since January 2025 there's been 19 burst pipes, and actually there was one on the weekend as well before this was sent. So it's 20 now, at least. So 20 burst pipes in this year so far. And they've basically said that the only saving grace that we have is that they're due to carry out some works and replace 6 kilometres of piping, which, to be honest, I don't think 6 kilometres is going to solve our problem. The burst pipes is only one part of it. Then we've got the pressure issues as well. Thankfully, I don't experience that, but lots of people on the group are having that. The 20 burst pipes, is that just due to an ageing infrastructure, Jason, or are there other reasons for this? To be honest, I'm not an expert on water systems at all. I'm just, just a concerned resident.
Of course. But I just wonder, are they informing you that, this is because the whole system is in tatters?
There's zero ownership taken on the issue at all. So there's no, they're not coming back with, this is the reason why this is happening. This is, what we plan to do to fix the problem. And I think that's what we really want out of this process is we want them to, what we really want is an independent audit of this water network that is suffering so badly. And even Micheál Martin himself addressed that, I believe, a couple of days ago on one of your programs, where he said that the system is failing. There's no doubt about that. And then his answer to that was, we give loads of money to Irish Water, they need to sort it out. But there's no one actually checking up. There's no one actually going out and finding out what is the problem, and how can it be resolved and how can it be fixed.
Whenever I discuss water issues, and to be honest with you, Jason, I could do this every day on the programme. I mean, we would drive people nuts because we could do this every single day. But there's one word that comes up all of the time, and it's communication, or lack of communication. That seems to be the big issue.
Yeah, I think transparency and communication is really important. This last outage that we had on the weekend just gone, we had multiple reports, and I myself received. So I had to call twice. The first time, I didn't get to the point where they offered an engineer to come out and look at the issue. But the first person told me that they actually switched the water off because the supply was too low, and then the second person said there must be a burst. We'll send out an engineer to investigate it. And I'm not the only person that's had that. So we're getting no proper communication. The agents that we speak to don't actually know what the problem is or what is going on, and it's getting to the point where we just don't have I suppose a leg to stand on in the process. No one's listening to us. No one listens to the TDs either, or to the county council. They completely wash their hands of it. If we go to them with issues, they just go, it's Irish Water's problem, not ours. And I think what we really want is at least a response from Irish Water, and I have a written complaint going in, and then we'll be going to the CRU if there's no further help for this issue. I just want to highlight as well, again, it's not only the burst pipes, and that's more of our concern is actually the pressure issues that we receive. So lots of people in the town, they receive a reduction in pressure between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day. So it's every day. Pressure is reduced every day. So it's not just randomly or what have you. It's every day. So they know it's coming. The big issue with that is, if you work late, you can't take a shower when you come home because your showers don't work because there's not enough pressure to push the water up into the attic tanks. Likewise, you can't run your dishwasher, your washing machine. It affects your whole day. It affects your whole life.
Why is that? Why is that? Did you get any answers to that, for example?
Well, there's no answers to that, and lots of people have looked for it. But the assumption is that the system that is in place in the Galtee scheme is not big enough to handle what's required of it, right? So you have the waters taken from boreholes and from Lake Muskerry. It's brought down to a treatment centre. It's then treated and then put into a reservoir, which is then sent out to all the homes. So, like what we recently had, where there was a boil water notice, there was too much turbidity in the water. So basically, that just means there was obviously a lot of runoff, a lot of it makes this hard to treat.
Sure.
And so my understanding is I would imagine they just bypassed the treatment plant altogether, put it in, and then told people to boil it before they drink it because it was just too much water to handle. But also that the treatment plant can't handle that amount of water being processed. And then so what you have is a knock-on effect, and essentially what they're doing is they're doing what's called load shedding, which coming from South Africa originally, it's a very common thing that we have in the electricity front, where there just isn't enough supply, so they have to switch it off or turn it down. So what you'll have is cases like this where they just switch off the water or they turn it down so low that you can barely get anything out in order to build up the reservoir to be used then during the day by businesses and people. So
it's incredible. You've obviously really gone into this, Jason. But what you're concentrating on, and rightly so too, would be domestic supply. But I'm thinking, God knows your area there of Tipperary Town and West Tip in general. You need investment in there. You need companies and businesses to be coming in. One of the first things they look at is infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And the thing is as well, look, there's not huge housing estates being thrown up, but there are still builds going on. So there's more people being added to the supply all the time. So, there's just, I believe the Galtee system, and I'm open to correction, but I think it's either 30 or 25 years old only. So it's not that old. It's not that it's old and failing, but more the size is not correct. It needs expansion. It needs further investment, as you say. Micheál Martin himself says there's money there. We give the money to Irish Water, so they need to sort it out. But there's no one checking. There's no one sorting it out. And then we have the other issue then of the big bonuses getting paid and the big salaries. We've loads of Irish Water employees are paid over 100,000 a year, just to, I don't know, to do what, who knows. But look, we're not denying someone a fair wage. We understand that there's a lot of pressure in that role. Excuse the pun, but there's a lot of pressure in the role to kind of get things done, and the service delivery is failing, and so taxpayers' money is again being wasted paying wages instead of actually solving the problems that we have. And so, look, that's the main goal of us, of setting up this group, was really just to rally the people together, kind of get a unified voice and try and, I suppose, push for action, because that's what we really need. The last thing we want to do is be on the radio all day long complaining about it. We just want a reliable system that should work.
Of course. And Jason, if people want to get involved with you and with your new group, how can they do that? How can they find out more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a Facebook page. That's the best place to kind of, that's where we are all the time. So it's Tipperary Town Water Crisis Action Group. You can find it on Facebook. It's a public group, so anyone can join. And look, what we use it for is sharing news. People sharing their outages. I've been sharing tips and tricks about what I've done to kind of help with the process. Things like storing water from rainwater. We've gotten to the point where we've actually had to build an outdoor shower, so that runs off of rainwater to keep to make sure that we have somewhere to wash. It's really getting difficult. So yeah, look, that's where people can reach us and people can share their stories and any inside info.
Well done, Jason. Really good to talk to you today. Thank you for coming on with us. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Thanks.
That's
Thanks,
Jason Devlin there, who's founder of the Tipperary Town Water Action Group. Some breaking news for you. Well, it's a surprise to me. Minister Paschal Donoghue will step down from his position as Minister for Finance and resign as a TD. Later on this week, he is resigning to take up a role with the World Bank. That's breaking news this morning.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Good, Paul. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Interesting text in from a listener regarding the water issues, Fran. I understand people's frustration with Cahir, but sometimes would you mention that the workers on the roads and those driving the vans are workers doing their job and they're doing the best they can? I'm one of those workers, and anytime people voice their frustrations on the show, I seem to be met with hostility and anger when I'm out on my route doing my job. People have often quoted hearing issues on the show and being frustrated. Maybe just to mention that the workers on the ground are trying to do their very best, and I completely and absolutely acknowledge that. And in fairness, when people are venting their frustration on the show, just like Jason did before the news there, it's about Cahir, it's about the management of Cahir, and I suppose it's about the government as well. And thank you for making that point and getting in touch with us today. 1800 938 007. Now, a private member's bill by the Social Democrats was recently put forward in the Dáil on whether a referendum should be held to reduce the voting age to 16. Deputy Aidan Farrelly, who's the party spokesperson on children, said despite the fact that teenagers aged 16 and 17 years can work and pay taxes, provide care to loved ones and consent to medical treatment, they do not have a right to vote. And he joins me now. Deputy Farrelly, good morning to you.
Morning, Brad. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Good to talk to you today. Tell me about this. You feel very strongly about this, I gather.
I do, Fran, absolutely. And I suppose that's rooted in my history as a youth worker for the last 15 or 16 years, working with young people in communities around Kildare and Dublin. And ultimately what I've seen, Fran, is throughout this time, young people often feeling frustrated, often feeling disempowered, outside of the system, even though quite often they're contributing it in the same way that you or I do in terms of paying taxes, but don't have the opportunity to exercise their opinion and voice their opinion in the way that we can through the ballot box. And what I've seen in the last kind of 10 years or so, Fran, in particular, is a movement in 15 or 16 countries with regards to vote at 16, the most recent of which that we've seen is the UK government coming out this year, confirming that in time for their next general election, young people aged 16 and 17 will have a vote at that. many government TDs and senators in the past in Ireland have tabled similar bills but have never gotten them as far as second stage, which is what took place last Thursday. So really what I was trying to do with my first piece of legislation as a TD, only being elected last year, was to try and early in this term bring forward the opportunity for government to facilitate a referendum so that the people can have their say on that ultimately.
Yeah, my understanding is, Aidan, that, in jurisdictions that have embraced this, places like Brazil and Austria and Argentina and the like, it hasn't been greatly influential on politics.
Correct, and that's, I think, further merit to introducing it. It hasn't swayed an election result at all, but what it has done ultimately is give a cohort of people aged 16 and 17 who are often, working part-time or in some cases full-time, providing care in the home or to others, young people who can consent to medical treatment within the HSE, often making very mature and important decisions about their future. Well, what is a bigger decision to make than going in to cast your vote?
But in our courts, we view them as children.
We do, and so there are, and that this legislation wouldn't propose to change that. But we can separate, I suppose, some of those discussions and arguments. This one is about an opinion piece, about exercising your opinion. I've gone around schools and youth services in advance of many local general elections, referenda, and we do mock elections. Those results are very much consistent with what the national results would be, and so that's an important piece of research, because backed up by that research is the notion that if you get the franchise at 16, you're more likely to use it than if you get it at 18. And that's important considering turnout is dipping, the momentum isn't supportive of a growing civic engagement, but actually more people that are apathetic towards elections or referenda. And it's an attempt to try and arrest that a little bit.
Do you have any fears, though, because young people in particular are very susceptible to what's happening on social media, and there may be, shallow interpretations of what's happening politically, I suppose, and they may be influenced by maybe people with other things in mind, if you know what I mean. Have you fears around that?
I don't, Fran, honestly, because I've worked with thousands of young people in my career, and absolutely, some will display an impulsive or maybe fractious idea of what politics is. They may not see candidates that appeal to them or parties that appeal to them. And we've seen young people and their involvement being instrumental in the recent presidential campaign in Ireland, or the recent mayoral election in New York, or the presidential election in America. Young people's involvement have a history of certainly influencing the movements within campaigns. But I don't think young people are any more susceptible to information that they receive online than adults are. And also what we've seen is when you meet young people, and many people spoke about this in the debate in the Dáil on Thursday, when we spoke about this, there is no harder engagement than a group of young people in a school setting or youth club setting when it comes to questioning policy, to questioning candidates on their track record on various issues. Most young people are actually very well informed about the political context and scene in Ireland.
And where is that information coming from? I mean, I know that there's still, I think there's still, it's been so long for me, I think there's still civics in school, or is there?
There is. So from first to third year in junior cycle, students participate in CSTE, which is Civic, Social, Political Education. Now, many would have characterised that to me as more of a history lesson than an opportunity to engage in critical discussion or thought. But we've seen many schools now roll out the Politics and Society module at Leaving Cert. It is mind-blowing, Fran, when you meet students who've been engaged in that. They're not party political quite often, which is really good, but they are politically conscious. They are able to question rhetoric. They're able to question hyperbole. They can talk about policy in a real meaningful way. And my attempt last week is to try and match their rights with their competency and their maturity. And that's where we're at.
And those from a conservative background, Aidan, that might say to you, that's all fine and very well, but what we're seeing a lot in our schools now really is liberal education and liberal values, and very little of a conservative nature, and that would be their concern here, is that an ideology would be at play here. How would you answer that?
Only to say that I disagree, and it's first-hand experience of that. I think the evolution of our curriculum is an important consideration in any sort of political movement, and one of the biggest critiques of this legislation is that what you would end up doing is politicising a vulnerable cohort of young people. But what that does, Fran, is intrinsically undermine young people's ability for their own opinions and self-critical kind of thought. We have youth services, certainly in Tipperary, no better youth service that is not party political, but will encourage young people to become critical consumers who ask questions about any issues of the day, that they don't just accept verbatim what is being told to them, whether that's when they scroll on social media or whether they're in school. I would kind of come back that our curriculum is very well balanced, in my opinion. It is certainly, when you look at CSC modules, history or geography like that, there's no liberal agenda at play there. And when young people at 16 have the right to vote, they won't intrinsically vote liberal either, actually. What we can see is a spread right across the political spectrum. It's not the reason or justification to keep 16 and 17-year-olds out of the conversation, but actually an opportunity to bring them into the fold.
What appetite is there out there to support this? Because I know one senior government minister is described as saying this is a load of bullshit, which is must have put a lot of thought into that particular thought. But what is the general thinking out there?
It's hard to say. Certainly the feedback in terms of I've received directly has been very positive, and certainly from the young people that I've spoken to, youth workers and many parents, they understand it. Now, others, definitely there would be a hesitancy, let's call it as it is, Fran. A referendum on this tomorrow would lose. And I think what we need is to try and facilitate that discussion maybe periodically. And that debate on Thursday really highlighted that. If we could maybe extend the franchise to young people for local and European elections first, where people can see that young people's participation won't skew any election results. That's quite often what happens. But the research in Scotland, Fran, if I can, is really informative, because we're colleagues in many ways with our neighbours in Scotland. A poll was done before 16-year-olds could vote, which happened about 10 years ago in Scotland. 3 in 10 adults, only before the vote, wanted that to happen. So there was no public support for that. But post young persons' engagement, and many elections have happened since there, that interest now and support for young people voting has gone from 3 in 10 to close to 7 in 10. So that's a really important piece that we can maybe use as a bit of a marker for how the discussion might evolve in Ireland. There will always be some hesitancy to young people's rights. Unfortunately, that's just the reality.
Right.
But this is maybe an important opportunity to start that discussion.
Well, it's a very interesting discussion, and that's for sure. And I'd be very interested to know what our listeners think of this. 1800 938 007. Before I let you go, Aidan, can I ask you about that shock news this morning that Paschal Donohoe is stepping down as Minister for Finance and moving on? Are you surprised about that?
No. I think there's been rumours abound in the first... I'm only a TD for a year, and so the rumour mill is always running rife in Leinster House. But I think there's been many rumours over the years and much media speculation that Minister Donohoe at some point or other might be taking on a role in a different context. And I'll take the opportunity to wish him the very best of luck on that. We're excited, and the Social Democrats will be, I'm sure, contesting that by-election and see that, like in Galway, as an opportunity to further the Social Democrats' representation in Dáil Éireann.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the response from our listeners on that. You see, there is a perception, there's a kind of a cynicism. I'm sure I know that you're relatively new to politics, but there's a cynicism out there, you know, when people are saying, sure, look, that just goes to prove what we've been saying all along, that people are in the Dáil on a temporary basis while they're sort of looking for a bigger job on the world stage in some way. It plays into that, does it not?
Well, I'm in the most privileged job of a lifetime, and I make no qualms about that. To go and represent the people of Kildare North in Dáil Éireann is the greatest professional privilege of my life. Paschal has obviously made a decision for himself and his family, and he's only the right person to comment on that specifically. But I'm sure in the same way that the representatives of Tipperary up in Dáil Éireann there is no greater privilege, I have to say, as a public representative than do what we've done. And Pascal can defend his record. You know, as Minister for Finance and Public Expenditure, as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, I'm dealing every week in, week out, with areas of incompetence and misexpenditure from government departments and public bodies. He's been part of that furniture for decades now. So now there'll be a new finance minister who maybe can take a fresh approach to that.
So you're glad to see the back of him?
I wish him the very best, Fran. I wish him the very best, but we shouldn't. I'm sure many will take the opportunity to look at the merits of Fine Gael's governance in Ireland. I have to say, as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, the waste of public money that is rife throughout not just government departments but government bodies and state bodies is it goes beyond incompetence at this point. And to us, the only answer will be an alternative government that actually takes seriously the idea that we ask people to pay very high taxes. We should be getting bang for our buck when it comes to public services, and right now that's not the case. All
right. Aidan, good to talk to you today. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
You too,
Thank you. Good morning to you. Deputy Aidan Farrelly there of the Social Democrats speaking to us. 1800 938 007. The listener runs straight away to say, Fran, voting should be left to the adults.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, over the weekend, pictures began to circulate online after part of the Marlfield Road near the Tubbernahina well collapsed. And a regular contributor to the show and a resident of that area, Noel Buckley, is with me in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Fran. How are you? Lovely morning out there.
So I believe even though I'm frozen in here. I saw the pictures. That really is incredible.
Yeah, it's a major structural collapse of the people going in the Marlfield Road will be familiar with it as you come towards the junction with Abbey Road. There, you're coming down off of a height towards Abbey Road, and you wouldn't see it, but walkers would be familiar with it. There's Tubbernahina Well there, which is a beautiful space for nature, but that's about 20-30 feet below the road. But during the weekend, with flooding on that, the wall collapsed and a section of the road collapsed down into that area underneath. So when you walk, anybody who's been in Tubbernahina Well, when you look up, you'll see the sheer height of the road over the well. So obviously the road is compromised, and thankfully the council were quick in their response and shut it down. But and thankfully there was no car passing as it collapsed.
Absolutely,
because a section of the road has slid in as well.
It looks like a huge job, though.
Yeah, because I suppose the road has been built up over time, and you would see, I even looked at it this morning, like the whole structure that's supporting the road underneath was held by that wall, and that's gone now on the bank there. So it'll be a major job to bring that back to a position where the road will be safe to open.
My God.
And as I understand from talking to the council, there is a fund they can apply to under emergency roadworks. As often happens, you often see in floods, bridges collapse, this, that and the other, and it wouldn't be in a government or a council budget, in fairness, to take action, and yet action is needed immediately, and the same in this case. So I understand the council will be applying to central government for
the road is closed
funding.
And will remain closed.
Well, it will remain closed. Unfortunately, people travelling to and from Marlfield via the Marlfield Road can go up by O'Leary's garage there. At least, it hasn't created major traffic issues in that sense, and the 2 or 3 local houses still have access that are within that zone of the road that's shut off.
Yeah, and because it's an ancient area around the well there, is there an archaeological aspect to this?
That now, Fran, I couldn't answer, but it is a very ancient area, because I know in the history records when Cromwell went to invade or tried to invade Clonmel, the people at Clonmel poisoned the well in Tubbernahina, threw down some dead animals, and that's why a lot of his soldiers got sick. So, it's a very ancient historical area, and you'll generally find where there's wells it's an ancient historical area. But in fairness, most of that road is constructed in modern times, and you can see when you look at the exposed part now, you know, modern stone, this,
Right,
that,
how
and the
it
other.
evolved.
So I'd imagine a large support wall will have to be built to ensure it never happens
And
again.
was there any indication that it was vulnerable or fragile?
No, none of us were aware of it. No, and in fairness to the council, if there was a vulnerability, because I mean we've had issues out in Marlfield at various times when something is vulnerable or a potential risk, they will put up warning signs or shut down. So there was no indication. But remember, we had massive heavy rain during the when that happened. So water weakens stuff, and you've seen it. Mudslides, a whole lot of stuff happens when the power and force of water come behind something.
Yeah.
So
but
that's
as you say,
that's going to be a challenge going into the future.
Yeah, but it could have been much worse, as you say.
Thankfully, it could have been much worse, and we're fortunate in Clonmel in terms of having the flood walls. In terms of flooding, is going to be much worse going into the future.
And that's very worrying indeed. Will you put on your other hat on, your bids hat, business in the development? You were advertising tomorrow in the local paper.
Yeah, and the local paper in the Nationalist, people will see a notice that our proposal is going before the public. Now, listeners might say, but you had that before us already. Well, we were made aware of a technical issue in the original notice we published. And because we were worried what certain individuals might do with that, in terms of halting the process at critical times, we said it's better go back to the starting block and get it right. People have had experience of this often in a planning notice as well, and you just have to restart the process again. So the process will start tomorrow. In the last public submissions, or in the last public display of notice back in September, we got 180 businesses supporting the proposal for bids. So we will be requesting those businesses again to take heed of the notice. The submission will be available from Thursday in the council offices to look at. And anybody, the public, various cultural and social organisations and businesses will be free to make observations and make submissions. And as I said, I think apart from one, which wasn't even signed, all of the 180 were in support of the bid the last time.
So the issue with the advertising, it didn't damage the credibility of the project?
No, it didn't. No. As I said, it was the worry about jeopardising it, given, as you know, and I know and the public know and have seen advertisements, there are certain individuals who are totally opposed to the bid, and we were afraid they might use that at a critical juncture in terms of once we were starting to establish the bid, and that would mean we'd have to go back again. So we didn't want to risk that, to make sure, if you like, everything is in order as we go forward.
Okay. Was there a loss of money because of that?
No, not really. I mean, a loss of time and a massive input of time again, because again we have to do the whole thing again. No major loss of money. The council does the advertising for it. They're obliged as the authority to do that.
Would you just give us the potted version here? Bids is what exactly? Just to remind people.
Yeah, and I suppose this is the danger always when you use titles, acronyms. BID means Business Improvement District. They're in Drogheda, Donegal and Sligo, and anybody, if they want to go onto those sites at the moment, will see those towns have a fantastic display of Christmas lights, and that's thanks to the support of BID. But basically it's where the business people in the BID map area of Clonmel will be asked to vote sometime in spring on whether they will agree to a bid levy. And basically what it will mean, for every €1,000 you pay in rates, you'll agree to pay €50 into a bid levy. And that pool of money will, if the business people agree, and remember they're the ones that will have the say in this, not the councillors, not Joe Soap, the business people in the bid map area. If they agree to have that go ahead, a company will be set up. It will generate 350,000 each year annually, and it's set up for 5 years, because I've heard people say, once this is set up you'll never get rid of it. every 5 years, the business people of Clonmel, if it's approved, will have the right to vote whether they wanted to continue
So
or
they'll
not.
review it.
They'll review it. So the first 5 years are going to be critical, and the board of directors and the CEO, they will have to make sure they're delivering on what they promise, because the business people will have the right to say, this isn't working for the town, we voted out of existence.
Right, and I know
So
we
it's
discussed before the obvious rebuttal there is people pay rates, and why should they have to pay again for this sort of thing?
Well, look, we can take that attitude and that negativity that you constantly hear, and the people that articulate that, very often the question should be asked to them, well, what have you done about it? And some of them are in positions to do something about it and to raise it as an issue, and they simply haven't. Some of them have been in existence for a long time working with the council, they haven't. The other thing is people have often had the frustration, and the council, in fairness, as an authority, is bound by a whole lot of regulation and so on. A bid company doesn't have as many stages to go through. They can get things done faster, and that often frustrates businesses in the town, saying, how long is this going to take to deliver? And you've had here local elected representatives saying, we've got X for the town, but it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Whereas if a bid company decides to do something, because they're a private entity, they can go and get it done. But I think the win-win for the business people of the town is there are lots of funding out there that local authorities are barred from applying for because they're a local authority. But a bid company and voluntary groups can apply for that type of funding. And we've had examples from other bid organisations where they've sourced another 200,000 or 300,000 a year. Now that's and the win-win, I think, for business is that they will control this fund. That is the big win, that they will control the expenditure, they will control what they will prioritise for the town.
And largely, is it positive response?
It is, yeah. And look, you will have the few people who are trying to say, oh, it's all negative and this, that and the other. But if we listen to negative people in this world or this country, we wouldn't get much done. And to me, the obvious thing, we had Sligo bid down there last November, and they did a presentation about, we invited businesses from the town to come to the Talbot Hotel, and we were bowled over. Over 300 businesses turned up that night to engage with it and to listen to what it had done for Sligo. And even I know 2 businessmen personally who come in totally opposed to bid and went away saying this is a no-brainer.
It's interesting. I was delighted to see that recently. I know that you met with the superintendent, and I think that's very important, because over the last few days here on the programme we've been hearing horror stories about issues around the town of Clonmel particularly, and policing and all of that. What did you get from the superintendent?
Well, I suppose our meeting, Michelle Aylward, Frank Moran and myself met with him in terms of making him aware of that we were starting a process called Clonmel Bid, and to know would he be supportive of it and so on, and he was highly supportive of it. And as he emphasised to us, he's supportive of anything where people in a community can come together and work together around a common purpose. He faces challenges.
What can he bring to this?
Well, what he can bring, he wants to work with the business community of the town. And that's what we were emphasising, because the Purple Pulse app, which is an app Sligo have developed for business people to work with on Garda Síochána, in terms of providing the hard data of what's happening around rather than anecdotal. And of course it strengthens his hand in arguing for extra resources. But as he said himself, and we know it, and you've had your elected representatives on here, the number of Gardaí available to him is down. I think for the area he controls, Cahir, Clonmel and Carrick, he's down 25 Gardaí. So you have only so many Gardaí to go around. And remember, Gardaí operate on a 24-hour shift. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So, and equally, if somebody is out sick, that has consequences for your rostering on a 3-roster basis and so on. But the drugs is a huge challenge here in this town and in any community around Ireland. And Sláintecare and Tipperary Council, in fairness, set up a group 2 years ago involving business people, community groups, social work groups, to have conversations about substance use in the town, along with experts who are involved at the coalface of that, to try and bring a whole community response to it. And I was listening there earlier on this morning, somebody made the point, the victims aren't the problem here, it's the It's the drug
pushers. Yeah.
And look at everybody in this town knows there is a cartel operating a drugs economy here and supply. They're the ones that have to be taken on. And I think there's a level of frustration among the local community.
What did the superintendent... I mean, the dogs in the streets know this.
Yeah.
What did the superintendent say to you?
Well, we weren't dealing with specific issues
but that's one of the really big issues.
It is, yeah, it is. But I suppose... and you know, we've seen it at a national level. Drug suppliers have got very sophisticated. In the old days, for instance, you had to go out and find a pusher on the street to get your supply. Now they can deliver it by taxi or by drone to you. You can pre-order the drugs. So,
but it does seem that Clonmel has become a hub.
Yeah.
Because people are getting taxis, they're getting lifts, they're getting
I think
minibus
part
into
of the
town.
challenge...
It's like drug tourism
part
here, you know?
Yeah, part of the challenge with Clonmel is a lot of the services for drug users, methadone and a whole lot of support services are all... In other words, the towns in the county are not sharing the burden equally. So a lot of the services are anchored here in Clonmel. So naturally, people who are in need of support or in need of methadone are gravitating into Clonmel to access that. And there needs to be a fairer distribution of services around the county. Like every community, not just in urban spaces in this county, but and every rural village will tell you there is a drug problem. So every community has a challenge in terms of how can they best address that. As an issue. And like I was talking to one business guy lately who's not a drug user, who was at himself and a friend were at a party, a stag party, and at the end of the night they went back to somebody's apartment and there was 26 of them there and they were the only two not abusing. You know, so we tend to think of drugs culture as
homeless people, or disenfranchised people on the streets. Yes.
But these were all business people.
Right. And that plays into the whole issue.
They're as guilty as the video you saw of somebody injecting somebody in the town. They're even more guilty in terms of supporting it. And we tend to think of it as a younger generation, but I've talked to a few people who work in public spaces, social events.
So it's a much bigger conversation now.
And that's why, in fairness to Prairie County Council, I've taken the initiative along with Slán Cahir and the Health Board in bringing together a cross-community group to look at the whole challenges. How do we address this issue? And I heard one of your previous speakers or somebody that contributed to your programme earlier on this morning point out that we'd say, in a way, drug users are the victims of that criminal activity. And it is a criminal activity, and the amount of money that it's generating for those criminals is enormous. And we hear constantly.
And it's grand. And I take the point about, they are victims to some degree, but the real victims are the older people who are afraid to go around the street. Or the young people who are witnessing this sort of stuff. It creates a culture of fear. Like I had the experience, I was in Dublin lately, and I drove I was looking at something, an apartment in a particular place for a friend of mine, and I drove in a beautiful residential area, and there was a wall there with masses of flowers and near where I parked the car, and there was a young lad there, 16 years of age, and graffiti in the wall, "Rest in peace, the person that had died." So I went over to talk to him, and it turned out it was a 15-year-old who had overdosed. Wow.
And it is frightening now for parents.
Yes.
In terms of, one time it was culturally unacceptable to engage in drug use and drug abuse. You were the outsider if you were doing it. Now it's nearly the reverse. You're nearly the outsider in social groups if you're not using. So, the one thing I would say to parents, having worked on transition year programs on drug use and that, is the importance of, number one, educating yourself about it, but also in terms of bringing up your child and doing as much as you can to foster confidence and belief in themselves. Because you'll find with a lot of drug users, it's a response to trauma, it's a response to lack of confidence and so on. And but then there's now the added challenge of the social pressure to
I
be
know
a user.
we're continuing this conversation on the programme tomorrow. Look forward to hearing more about bids as it evolves, Nolan. Thanks very much for coming in.
Could I just mention, as you'll see, Christmas lights are going up around the town at the moment.
Yep.
And last year we had a shortfall of nearly 20,000. Now, hopefully, if bids is off the ground next year, this will not be an issue for businesses. Yes. But we're appealing to business. The letter has gone out to every business in the town. If every business can make a donation to that fund, the Chamber of Commerce, if you ring the Chamber of Commerce, they'll give you the IBAN and big address.
Very good.
And I'd appreciate it. We would support it.
Good to see you, Noel. Thanks very much indeed. We'll be back in just a moment.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007. Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tippfm.com.
This was said the Soc Dems haven't much to be bothered about when they're trying to get votes for 16-year-olds without the responsibilities that go with being 18. In fact, I'd say young people nowadays have a lot less lived experience than a generation ago. Much of the civic-type subjects are just slanted to left-wing activism. I speak as a parent of a 17-year-old. She's a great girl, as are many of her pals, but giving her a vote isn't on their agenda at all. Left-wing nonsense from the Soc Dems as usual. This is one of our listeners. Somebody else on to us complimenting Aidan Farrelly on the programme this morning, saying that it was a very interesting interview. Now, let us continue with that conversation around drugs. We've been inundated with correspondence in relation to the video that circulated over the weekend of public drug use in Clonmel. Paul joins me. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning, Fran.
Interesting, Paul. You think that more Gardaí is not necessarily the answer. Is that it?
Well, more Gardaí is always a good idea, but no, it's not the answer.
So what is the answer, do you think?
Now, this is my hobby horse. Consequences.
Yeah.
Simple as. Like when I was a young man, if you were hanging around the street corner and the guard came by, I didn't like to look at you. There was a clip around the ear and away home to your mother. Mm. Now, I'm not suggesting that the guards could give anyone a clip around the ear. But the thing of it all is, think of it this way. It's the last time I saw, a few weeks ago, there was a study done, and they discovered that it's €1,900 per week to keep a prisoner in jail.
Right. Wow.
Now, and the state gives. I know a couple of last year you had. I think there was a woman from a nursing home on the Templemore Road, and they said the state was only giving €1,000 a week for an elderly person staying in the nursing home. Mm. You know, so we're prepared to treat people who have done nothing wrong with half the value of people who are a blemish on society.
Right. I suppose the extra cost there is around security and, securing those prisoners.
Security, and educating them and making sure they have a menu and that kind of carry on.
God, you sound very cross over that, are you? So are you one of these people that would believe they should be thrown in a cell and the key thrown away? And
No. Yeah. But I don't think they should be treated better than those who haven't done anything wrong.
Right. And you think they are?
Oh yeah, of course they are. Mm. I mean, there was an article a while ago there with the drugs getting into Mount Joy. They said they wanted to limit the amount of visitors a person could have to 6, and they had to name the 6. Mm. And that would keep it back close. And the prisoners were saying, but I have loads of cousins and aunties and all the rest of it. And the interviewer said, but look, they're not in here for your charitable deeds.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you have the story of the fella who was caught for no tax on his car, and he's told, okay, it's a €200 fine or 7 days in jail. So they want to spend $2,000 putting a guy in jail for a week for a €200 fine. Have more stuff that carries a fine, and don't bother this. You go to jail if you don't pay the fine. You have 30 days to pay it, and if you don't, we'll take it out of your bank account, we'll take it out of your wages, we'll take it out of your dough, but you will pay it.
What do you say to the person? One of our listeners was rather cross with me this morning and saying that the people who were videoed shooting up drugs in Clonmel, that they're the victims. And that, you know, I shouldn't be making any point about them being criminals, and in fact it's the dealers we should be looking at. How do you view those comments?
Nonsense. Now, having said that, there is a degree of it.
Yeah.
But having said that, many years ago in my misspent youth, I partook of a joint. And all I got was a sore throat.
Right.
And I said I've no intention of going anywhere near this needle business or snorting stuff and all the rest of that. No, you can start that way, but at the end of the day, you might go and have a pint with your father, your first pint. There's no one dragging you down to buy the next one.
Yeah. But do you take the point that the person's making, that we see these people shooting up but we need to view them as the victims of this?
To some degree.
Yeah.
To some degree. Bring them in, clean them out. Yeah. Get them off it. And it can be done. Do you ever hear of a country singer called Waylon Jennings?
Of course I did. A great fan of his music over the years, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a great fan myself. Now, Waylon was spending $1,500 a day on coke.
Wow.
I think I better stop this. And he went out into the middle of nowhere with his wife for about 2 months and went cold turkey. That was it.
That can't have been fun.
Oh, it can't have been fun, but his attitude is like, Betty Ford didn't put me on this crap and you can't get me off it. Anybody can give anything up, but they have to decide.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility. As to the other thing about 16-year-olds voting.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Most 16-year-olds that I know couldn't find their arse using both their hands.
Never mind. You can't say that, Paul.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No, what I mean is you can't. I mean, really, do you really believe that?
They're more concerned with which girl they're going to chase, or where they're going Saturday night, or who's giving the lift to the dance.
Yeah, I know a lot of middle-aged people like that too.
Yeah.
But do you really believe? Do you think they wouldn't be capable of making a political decision? Is that it?
Absolutely, not a snowball's chance in hell.
Wow.
I'm nearly 64 and I have difficulty.
But Aidan Farrelly was telling me, the Soc Dems TD for Kildare, he's the guy who's pushing this. But he was saying that the young people that he's involved with in youth centres and all of that they're very politically aware and they'd be well up to making these kind of decisions. Would you disagree?
Absolutely. Yeah, I say, as far as I can see, your average 16-year-old is but they're not mature enough. I mean, knacker drinking.
And why do you think some politicians are pushing for this to happen then?
It's to keep the name in the eye. Elvis's manager says, don't mind what they say about you as long as they spell your name right. It's a cynical exercise. The simple fact of the matter is that we have a hell of a lot more to worry about than whether 16-year-olds can vote, or the occupied territories bill, or any of that stuff at all. We're short of houses, too many migrants, we've a law and order issue. But just to put the tin hat on the law and order issue, it's like sending cowboys out to round up cattle, but they haven't got a field to put them in.
Yeah, so there's a lot more important issues as far as you're concerned than 16-year-olds voting.
Of course, absolutely. I'm pretty sure they don't want to be arsed with it. They want to. Yeah. They want to live their life and have fun. They're young. Let them be young and enjoy themselves, and not be. There's no time to be serious later on.
All right, Paul. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for your time
Thank you
this
very
morning.
much. Have a
Thank you.
good
Bye
day.
bye. That's Paul there. Not impressed with the notion that we would bring the voting age down to 16. How do you feel about that? 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Paul, and welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. We were speaking about addiction there, and one listener taking me to task for seeing addicts as criminals, I suppose, instead of victims. But listen around to say, hi, Fran. I don't think the addicts are so innocent. My daughter was a drug addict. She gave it up with a lot of struggle and help, and that was about 5 years ago. To this day, she is still approached and offered drugs on the streets of Clonmel. Hence, she only goes to town when she really has to. Giving the vote to 16-year-olds is absolutely madness, and they don't know their arse from their elbow. This is one of our listeners, and that seems to be the general thinking. From some of our listeners this morning, Deirdre was on to say, if we only view the people shooting up in Clonmel as victims, then we forget about the damage these people can do to the community when they need money to buy the drugs. As we know, violence and robbery are common where addicted individuals are concerned when they need a hit desperately. The Gardaí should be focusing on arresting the layers of suppliers that are well known to the community and to the Gardaí as well. It's something we will be getting back to, we promise.
Legal discussion on Tip Today is brought to you in association with Lynch Solicitors Clonmel, on the web at lynchsolicitors.ie and at divorceineireland.com.
John Lynch is with me in studio. Good morning to you,
Morning,
John.
Fran. How are you?
It's an interesting topic, that, isn't it? You know, whether do you view somebody as a victim or do you view them as a criminal if they're doing something that is maybe beyond their control a little bit, you know?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's like everything else. You learn as you go on that there's no black and white, there's no straight answer to anything. And yes, there are victims, but I mean, you would like to hope that with the little, that if you come at it from different angles, if you know what I mean, and you deal with it on the basis of education, cutting off the supply, you know, dealing with supply issues, dealing with education issues, dealing with intervention issues. You know, there's not any one answer to any one of these issues, if you know what I mean. And I suppose the longer you look at it, the more you realise that, you know. And it's like what people often talk about law, you know, that law is an ass, and that they think law is black and white, whereas in fact there's a huge amount of grey in it. And the same I would always think when you're dealing with these kind of issues, that if you could deal with it on the basis that you're not going to get one answer, that there's multiple answers, there's multiple layers, you know. And if you look at anybody who suffers from addiction, you always, in my head, I always think that you're dealing with kind of two almost schizophrenic split personality. You've got the addict, which is one personality, and they bear no resemblance sometimes to their other personality, who might be your child, your cousin, your friend, or whatever, you know.
That's a very interesting thing.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to, you know, it's very hard to keep that in your mind, you know, when you're, because we kind of get into a blame game, and we get very unforgiving about people who suffer from addictions, and we think that, you know, and I mean, I was listening to your speaker there who's talking about, you know, cold turkey versus whatever and how you do it.
Yeah.
There's many different ways to deal with it, you know, and the same with the legal system and the same with the penal system that we have. I mean, when I studied jurisprudence years and years and years ago, you know, they were talking about the penal code because it's always a very interesting one to study, you know. How should you approach criminality within the system, you know? Should it be penal in the sense that you lock them up, throw away the key?
Yeah.
Should it be that you try and educate them and get to them and try and change the way of whatever,
rehabilitate them?
Yeah,
and so
rehabilitation, etc. And so, you know, after a long debate about it, I remember, you kind of come back to the idea that it's a combination of all those factors, and that there isn't any one element to it, that you have to look at all the elements, and not everything is, square peg, round hole. Not everything is going to fit into one solution.
Yeah, anyway. It's interesting because that I'm not sure if you saw that video doing the rounds of one guy helping another guy to shoot up, and I had to say I found it very sad to see, because they are individual stories, and if you went back on somebody's history, and I don't know what you'd find.
Correct, and the problem with that is that everybody who considers that to be the wrong approach to take, or the wrong view to look at it. Not every case is going to fall into that category. It's a societal issue that we've had for a long, long time, and we get really concerned about it because it seems to be an awful lot more prevalent. Funny, I had a visitor in over the weekend from Switzerland, and we were standing at the main guard looking up the street, and I was trying to do a history lesson in Clonmel, and I felt very, very poor, I have to say. The best I could say was that the main guard was an old Palatine court, because she was the judge.
Right.
She was the judge in Switzerland, and I said it was an old Palatine court, and then I was explaining the main guard, the west gate, and the significance of that. But while we were there were three. I don't know were they addicts, but they were. Yeah, I think they are. I think you would see them around the town, and they were making a lot of noise. They were having a row, and I said to her, I said, unfortunately, that's one of the things that have become more noticeable in Clonmel than heretofore, and I use that very technical legal term, heretofore. But anyway, she said, really, you've only got 3. And I thought, that's a very interesting observation. She's from Zurich in Switzerland, and she says, you've only got 3, which is interesting because...
Well, she would be used to something...
Much, at a much higher level.
Okay.
Which again, you'd say to yourself...
Interesting perspective on it, isn't it?
Interesting observation.
You're going to talk to us today about a subject I am hugely, and every broadcaster I know will be hugely interested in this, the idea of defamation.
Yes.
John. What is it, first of all? What is it?
How do you define it?
Yeah.
Well, it's defined, the definition of it is that it's a defamatory statement is one which is published by any means of a statement concerning a person that tends to injure that person's reputation in the eyes of reasonable members of society. So bottom line, it's somebody publishing, as in putting out there a statement which the content of which is such that it injures somebody's reputation in the eyes of reasonable members of society. So they're all the elements and attributes of what it is.
And has that term taken over from the idea of slander, for example?
Libel and slander it has.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's the 2009 definition under the Defamation Act 2009. So it's taken over from what you would have studied in your earlier days, libel, defamation, one being written and one being oral. It's now a kind of an omnibus phrase that covers all of those things. What actually... I find it really interesting because in the modern age now, where online is so prevalent and people are now listening to podcasts now rather than the telly and whatever,
Yes.
So you have a whole load of different forums where defamation could become relevant. And what caught my attention was the 2 cases caught my attention. One was Stillorgan Gas Heating and Plumbing Limited versus Manning. That's the name of the case, but that's not obviously what it's about. But I have the case in front of me, and I better just make sure that I don't get the facts of it wrong. But what happened here was that, surprisingly enough, Stillorgan Gas Heating and Plumbing is a plumbing company, and I'll give it to you off the top of my head insofar as I can remember the details of it. But anyway, the person, Mr. Manning, 2 sisters owned a place in Dublin, and there's a problem with the heat pump or with the plumbing system or whatever, but there's a problem with the pump. And he calls in Stillorgan Gas Heating and Plumbing, and when he calls them in, they give him a price. He pays a deposit. At the end of the job, anyway, they give another price. He gets very infuriated with it all. They go off and come back and remove all the hardware that they put in there. He calls the guards. Then he goes online and he does a review. Now, we all know about these reviews.
Yeah.
And he goes online to do a review. He does multiple reviews. He does 4 reviews in all, is what the court actually decided that he did. But he did a review, and the review fairly defamatory insofar as it was decided to be defamatory. So let's just park that just for a second. So he did this review and
very critical of them.
Very critical of them, right? Sets out the facts, and he calls them rogues and all this kind of stuff, right? And he gets blocked. He gets blocked. So what does he do? He does another review. And the other review he does in his wife's name because he's blocked. So he uses his wife's name to do it. And we talk about.
Oh, sorry, is he blocked by the social media platform?
By social media
okay,
platform.
Not the company.
Correct.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, correct. And he then gets a letter from the solicitor for the company, and he goes on to do a further review. So now he did all this over a period of days rather than weeks or months, if you know what I mean. And there weren't a lot of reviews there, but there was 4 of them, and they were fairly critical of the company. Now, the other interesting backstory to it was that when the company issued the proceedings, took the case to court, he ignored it. He didn't do anything. So when you don't do anything to court proceedings, what happens is that the person who's taken the case against you will go into, I'll use the phrase, will go into court, but they'll apply to the court and say, so-and-so hasn't replied to my case. I want to get you to make a determination. The court comes back and goes, okay, if they haven't responded to you, we will put it in for assessment. So in other words, liability and whether there's a right or wrong to your case won't be an issue. So you've proven liability, but we're now going to assess how much you're going to get by way of compensation. So he actually didn't even defend it from that point of view. So it went into court then for the judge in the High Court to decide how much was the company going to get.
Without Mr. Manning still?
Without Mr. Manning still up to that point.
Okay.
Mr. Manning turns up in court defending himself. And as in he had no counsel, solicitor, no barrister, whatever. So he comes in to defend this High Court case. Obviously the poor old devil was seriously stressed as a result of the fact that we're now looking at a High Court case with a jury scenario, and somebody somewhere must have told him this isn't something you should be ignoring. He came into court, and the other backstory was that he was separating from his wife at the time, which didn't help either.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what it was like from his point of view, faced with a slam dunk in terms of he couldn't argue that he didn't defame the person because he had failed to deal with the case, if you know what I mean. So now he was looking at how much was he going to get hit for in terms of compensation, and the thing to remember about defamation is that defamation, you don't have to prove that you have any actual loss. So if you look at this particular scenario, although it was, funnily enough, when I say funnily enough, it was interestingly enough dealt with in the case insofar as when they set out their case, they argued that there was a loss of income as a result of these defamatory statements or these reviews. They argued that there was a loss, and the person went in and he set out that between this month and that month and whatever, and there was an actual loss. So he was arguing that there was an actual loss. You don't actually have to prove loss in a defamation case. You don't have to prove financial loss. So in other words,
it could be reputational. Is that
reputational?
Yeah,
precisely. Okay. I can see your fair knowledge of this, friend. But yeah, it's reputation. It's reputational damage we're talking about, not pounds, shillings, and pence damage. And the pounds, shillings, and pence come in when you're going to get compensated. So went into court dealing with how much am I going to have to pay here. Judge hears the case, goes down through all the statements, and looks at the background to all of this. And the reason that the judge would look at the background, obviously, is to see is there any defence available to this particular individual, or are there any mitigating factors that they should take into account? And then, having looked at all that, then decide what's the level of compensation. Now, I'll sidestep just for a second, insofar as one of the issues that you would certainly be aware of as a broadcaster over the years is the level of damages that was awarded in these cases and the unpredictability of it. Like, you could get an award that could be 10,000 and then following day it could be 100,000, yes. And you couldn't really figure out what is the difference between them all. And that was to a certain extent addressed by the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land from a legal point of view, and they addressed it in the sense that they bracketed they used the term, they bracketed the award categories. So they tried to do what they did in personal injuries there quite recently, where they tried to categorise the various injuries and put a figure beside each one.
Yes.
So the Supreme Court actually, in the case that we're talking about, all of the High Court judgments kind of go back to that categorisation, and the lowest category is 0 to 40,000, and then it goes up incrementally after that. So let's stay at the 0 to 40,000 and say that that's the lowest category. But still 0 to 40,000. Now, in this particular case, the judge decided it fell into that category, and he based that decision, that reasoning, on the fact that it was only over a number of days rather than over any longer period of time. He gave the man some credit for turning up eventually in court. He gave him a little bit of credit for the circumstances surrounding the reason, that he put it in his wife's name. He kind of sidestepped. He's kind of said that the marriage was in difficulty and etc. So, not that I'm wondering how that would have probably put it in a little bit more difficulty. You would have imagined, but what he then did after that then was he had to put a number on it. So I haven't looked at it. Would you like to guess what number he put at it?
I'd say 10.
Yeah, 40.
Wow. He
awarded 40,000 in damages. And
wow.
Yeah, and the main reason on it was, and the interesting thing about it was, I think the logic of it is because of the medium that you're talking about. In
Social
other words,
media.
It was up on Trustpilot, which is a platform that you use.
You would go to check somebody else.
The word, the kind of name says it all, Trustpilot.
Yes.
So that was very influential, I think, in his mind. The whole concept of internet, the whole concept of 4 days on social media could be equivalent to a lot more on other mediums, on the basis of the number of people that are now accessing it and the speed with which you can move it on to other people. But an interesting now.
It's very interesting. And was there any account taken of the quality of the work? I have to be careful now in my wording of this. Of the quality of the work done, and because he had issues with the deal that he did with this company, did that play any part in it at all?
It didn't so far. I'll tell you what.
Did you tell me they looked for more money at the end of the process? Was that it?
They looked, yeah. They basically, in other words, don't forget now that the whole issue of that was redundant because he didn't enter an appearance to it.
Okay, so that played into this as well.
That didn't help him.
Okay.
I mean, if he had gone, and interestingly enough, if he'd gone in and justified why he had made the comments, but he accepted that he was over the top. I mean, if you're to read some of what he actually wrote on it, I mean, it was, he even took issue. Like, the poor devil was obviously in a bad place, because even when he got the solicitor's letter, like, one of the elements of defamation that they introduced was basically the whole idea of apology, and they introduced that in the 2009 Act, and they kind of made it statute. They created it by statute, by common law. It was always the case that if you got in and apologised fast and said, look, I'm really sorry about this, and you acknowledged the fact, it's somewhat similar to what you get in criminal cases. You'll often hear judges saying, well, I'm not going to give him 10 years, I'll give him 6 because, and I'm not being flippant, I'm probably being flippant when I say that, but because he accepted that he was guilty, and he expressed remorse, exactly.
Sort of stuff, yeah.
But I mean, he said a lot of the things that he said were fairly, he was over the top, and he went into all the details, and he basically, please don't let them near your home. I should have read the other reviews. These are rogue builders, etc. So he went much further than just setting out the fact, I'm very unhappy with this. And interestingly, the judge did kind of comment during the case that there are things that in reviews you are entitled to say. Otherwise, what would be the point in a review? So as you say, you can say, so-and-so did so-and-so, etc. And I mean, the thing to remember is that one of the most common... just as another point to make here, by the way, not only is he faced with 40,000, but he's also faced with high court costs.
I was going to ask you about the costs.
Oh, yeah. Because...
And their costs as well?
He wouldn't have any costs because he represented himself, but he'd have their costs.
Yes.
Senior counsel, junior counsel, solicitor, whatever. I mean, you could probably add another...
10 grand, I suppose.
More? Oh, much more. It's high court case, defamation, probably add another 40 on top of that.
What?
Yeah. So, like... Wow. And this is what I've kind of said to you a few times about social media. Now, one of the things that you've always got to remember, and I know that all down the years when people come into me on defamation cases, and we've had a few, there's always two factors that you kind of have to talk about before you start. And they're always the same. One of them is fairly common to litigation anyway, and it's, is the other party a mark? Will I recover against them? I mean, getting an award of 40,000 plus costs against somebody who has no money is of no value to you, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So Mark is one of them.
This is a cautionary tale, I think, John, for anybody out there using social media. Correct. Because I see the most scurrilous things said on social media, and I often wonder, are you for real? No,
correct. And I would agree with you, insofar as I think sometimes people don't realise it, the implications of it, and the wide scale publicity that there, and the very little, the mitigation that you're talking about. I mean, what are the defences? The only defences that you have open to you is that it was true. Now, as you say,
you have to prove that.
You must prove it.
Yeah.
Honest opinion, you must prove it. Honest opinion is what used to be fair comment. But honest opinion, I mean, you've got to back it up. You can't just say, well, I really believed this. I believed it's subjective. You have to prove it with objective evidence. Privilege is the other one, which is an age-old one that's there. And privilege, an offer to make amends, I would caution anybody to be aware of the fact that an offer to make amends is one of the most powerful defences that are available to you, insofar as if you defame somebody and suddenly go, oh my God, what am I after doing? That I was going to say the Saturday night when you have a couple of drinks and you're on the way home and you say something that you, obviously, when you wake up, you say, how in the name of God did I ever say that? And it's defamatory of somebody. The offer to make amends should be immediate. and if you make an offer to make amends, that almost is available as a full mitigation defence to you. It's either mitigatory or gives you a full clean sheet if you get in there fast.
Yeah, but the danger there is if you do that, it's an admission of guilt, is it not?
But you see, Fran, that's always the question that's often raised. Do I admit it or do I not? I am of the opinion that you're better off putting your hand up as fast as you can if you have made a mistake, be it criminal, civil or otherwise, because if you go down the road of, well, look, what I'm going to do here is, if I admit here now, I could be in serious trouble. Now, the reality of it is that the serious trouble you're going to be in if you don't admit it is going to be significantly more in defamation. Now, the other thing I would say before we go off that is, you've got fair and reasonable publication, but that's kind of more to do with journalism and your area as such. But the other point that I would kind of say to people as well is that there is a time limit on defamation. There is a 1 year.
Oh, it's 1 year, is it?
It's 1 year, yeah.
All right.
So there's a 1 year limit to when somebody can take defamation.
And when you mentioned privilege earlier on, I would see privilege as what our representatives would have in the Dáil, which is underprivileged. They can basically say what they want, I suppose, without fear of. But when you speak about privilege, there's
two types. There's absolute and there's qualified privilege. So qualified privilege would be a solicitor-client relationship, for example, an employer and employee relationship. There are certain scenarios where, by virtue of the relationship, there's a privilege there, which, as long as there isn't any malafides or bad faith, if you're so like the one that you would often think of as is a reference. An employer gives a reference and the employee isn't happy and they sue him in defamation and saying, now, okay, obviously you've got the truth argument to it, but there's the privilege argument to it as well. But the solicitor-client came up recently, if you might remember, in our case out the road on the land argument between Mr. O'Regan and Coolmore, where there was a consultation with a retired solicitor. Do you remember that? No,
I don't.
There was a case. We're talking about the Magner judgment, and John Magner consulted a solicitor, a former solicitor. Well, I was going to say former solicitor. He probably still is a solicitor, but he wasn't practicing.
Yes. And
the argument that was made in the High Court was there's certain communications between them that the other side looked for, and they were denied on the basis of privilege. And this is the privilege we're talking about, solicitor-client privilege. Okay. And the High Court said, no. First of all, he doesn't have a practicing certificate. Second of all, he's not working as a solicitor, and this is not qualified privilege.
It's all very, very interesting.
But you're right. The ultimate, absolute caution here is it is not a free-for-all on the internet.
And quickly, can I ask you, because many people on the internet are on the various social media platforms, they're anonymous because they put up some sort of a fake name or something like that.
Correct.
What if they defame somebody? Can that be chased back in some sort of way?
Well, that's a really, really interesting point, because one of the reforms that they're looking to put in place is exactly that: identification issues, finding out who made the defamatory statement, and obliging platforms to release the information and to do everything possible to release the information. And one of the areas of delay on being able to take a defamatory action is that you couldn't identify who the person was until a certain time. So if you've got a year to run, Mr. Unidentified could hide for a year, but hiding is no good if you don't know who they are.
Fascinating. There's some breaking news that I'm sure you'll be interested in as well, John. A judge has ruled that the school teacher Enoch Burke should be sent to prison for a fourth time for contempt of court orders requiring him to stay away from Wilson's Hospital School. Now, in a judgment delivered today, Mr. Justice Brian Cregan excoriated Mr. Burke indeed for his behaviour at the school and in the courtroom, which he described as a strategy of verbal abuse and bullying. So that saga goes on and on. Good to see you as always, John. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Fran.
We'll take a break, back with more in a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of her 1975 hit, It's Gonna Be a Cold, Cold Christmas, Ireland's first Eurovision winner, Dana, returns with a beautifully reimagined version of the timeless festive classic, and I'm delighted to be joined online by Dana this morning. Good morning, Dana. How are you?
Hi, Fran. I'm doing good, thank you. Hope you're well yourself.
I'm very well indeed. Always a pleasure to talk to you. 50 years, Dana. I can hardly believe it.
Oh, I know. Neither can I. I mean, it just, you say it and then you think, oh my goodness.
Yeah, God. And can you remember coming up with the idea of recording that song and the actual original recording? Can you remember all of that, Dana?
I remember it all because it wasn't my idea. I was recording in Germany in a studio called Hansa, and I got a call from the record company head, who was the Irish descent man, Dick Leahy. And he said, Roger Greenaway is flying over to Berlin, and he has a song he's written for you, and I think you need to record it right away. So he arrived. They'd already done the track, and he gave me the words, and he sang it for me, and I recorded it, and that was the end of November. So it was very, very close to Christmas, you know, and it was released, it was only, I think it was the first week of December.
Yes.
And it just took off, Fran. It shot up the charts, and at one point they were selling 50,000 copies a day.
Wow.
Those were the days.
Wow,
Yeah.
those were certainly the days. And was that around the time where you were a little unwell, that you had issues with your vocal cords? Was that around that time, Dana?
It was the following year.
Was it?
1975 was a wonderful, super year for me, and I had, I think, 3 different records that went into the top 20 in England and in Europe. So it was a really happy time, and I was working non-stop. And then into 1976, and that's when I kind of hit the brick wall.
Wow, that must have been a very scary time for you, because I think, was there a cancer scare around those growths on the vocal cords? Was there?
There was, Fran,
Right.
yes. Because a lot of singers and people who use their voice a lot get like a corn, it's called a nodule, and they can just pare it back. But unfortunately, I had a growth with a root, and so they had to cut the root out and therefore cut the cord. So it was a long journey back. It was almost 5 years before I could undertake like normal season work and prolonged concert work. But, you know, like most of the hard knocks you get in life, when you look back, you think, well, I'm not sorry that it happened, because it makes you reevaluate everything in your life.
I suppose it does. But at any stage, did you think you might be able to sing again?
Oh, frequently.
Oh,
frequently.
Wow.
I have to say. And just about 3 weeks before that happened to me, my father had a major heart attack. So it was just, our whole family was shocked, you know.
God.
And at times I was, I did think I'm never going to be back on the stage again.
So it must have been fantastic when you realised you could perform again and you could sing again.
It was, and it was with the help of friends who organised like a little private cabaret for me. And one of them was Cliff Richard, and many friends that I had at that time. And with my band, I did my cabaret act, and I got through it. And they were wonderful support. You know, I had fear of going on the stage, and thank God they really helped me get over that.
That's great. I didn't realise you were close to Cliff over the years, Dana.
Yeah, I've known Cliff. We first met in 1971.
Wow.
And so we've we've been close and known each other through all the years.
Do you know, we've spoken a lot over the years, but I didn't realise that you had a brush with Hollywood at one stage as well. I didn't realise that.
I did. And Eamon Andrews' old cardigan. I thought Hollywood was going to be glamorous, Fran, but I played the part of a little traveller girl, in the film version of The Flight of the Doves, a wonderful children's book by Walter Mahan. And every day they put glycerine on my hair and smudged the cardigan. They took the button off the cardigan and smudged the cardigan. And I went out thinking, this is not like I imagined Hollywood.
My God.
But it was a great experience. We filmed in Clonmacnoise, and Jack Wilde, who was the Artful Dodger in Oliver.
In Oliver, yeah.
And Ron Moody, who was
Fagin, wasn't he?
Fagin.
Yeah.
Dorothy McGuire, a very big Hollywood star in the golden age. So it was an amazing experience. But to tell you the truth, I thought, no, I don't want to be involved in film work.
That it wasn't for you.
No, it wasn't.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And you went on, you did the big shows like Johnny Carson and the Merv Griffin Show and all of that around that time.
I did. And I had a private tour of Disneyland before it was open to the public. We were in there taking shots and photographs and whatever. And I have to say, when I look back now, I just had such wonderful, unexpected experiences in my life, and I'm very grateful for.
Aren't they absolutely fantastic altogether? What about now? I mean, we'll play the single in just a little bit. Are you touring, Donna? Have you plans for concerts or?
I'm actually not doing so much live work. I will be doing a concert in Rathkeil, a lovely community in Rathkeil.
Yeah.
In December, I think it's 12th. Excuse me, not remembering exactly the date.
Sure, yeah.
But I'll be doing that. But I am doing radio and some TV promotion on the single. And by the way, thank you so much last year. You were so supportive and you played Christmas Again, which led Christmas Again. My son suggested we write a Christmas song together that kind of reflected what everyone went through in COVID. And Christmas Again is about, listen, we can't be together for Christmas, but the next time we're together, we're going to make it Christmas. And that's still the same for many families. But out of that, when we came into the 50th anniversary year of Cold Christmas, he said, you should mark this. And it was hard for me to reimagine it because, 50 years of singing a song, it's stuck in your head. So I said, I can't reimagine it. And he said, I can. So it's what you call chamber pop. Now, I had never heard of that term.
Yeah.
But it's where you use like a chamber music sound in the strings.
Like a string section or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And kind of very mellow backing vocals. And it's all local lads that played on Christmas Again, and my nephew, my brother Jerry, who's a great musician.
Fantastic musician, yes, indeed he is.
Thank you. And did you know that Daniel has just recorded his song Country Boy, and it's on his new album?
Oh, that's I'm delighted to hear. I have great time for Jerry and his work. Yeah, that's brilliant.
I'm thrilled, him and his wife Fiona. But anyway, we had all the same crew. I'm so proud of them, Fran, because they all work in jobs outside of music, but their love of music, like so many in Ireland, carries them through their life, and they're great musicians. And singing, and my nephew Jonathan, who was in the band The Rua with his sisters, he's doing backing vocals with a gorgeous wee girl who worked in the coffee shop where Rob and the gang used to go to get their coffees. Beautiful wee girl and a beautiful voice.
Yes.
So I hope people will like it. It is reimagined. It's me singing it today, not 50 years ago, as you normally hear on the radio. So it's real special to me. And that you're playing it.
Oh, sure. Why wouldn't I play? It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Before I play, can I just ask you about the presidential election? Did it bring you back memories with all that went on? You were there in 2011 and in, I think, was it 1997 as well? Did it bring you back?
Yes.
Did it bring you back memories, Dana?
Well, it was a sadness I felt about it because,
was it?
as you know, in 97, I was the first independent to actually go through the route of the councils and get nominated. Yeah. And that was a right of the councillors to make that vote, and they get so much little chance to do anything now. So it's so centralised, and that's a really powerful vote because they're on the coalface and they're very close to the people on the ground, and that upholds the democratic right and constitutional right of the people to choose their president. So when that was closed down, I think that was something that should never happen again. And then, of course, it all fell apart. But Catherine Connolly, now we wouldn't see eye to eye on a number of issues. Sure. But I think she's a principled woman, and when she was in the Galway Council, she nominated me to run. So, you know, we don't need illiberal liberals, you know, who say they're liberal and then close down everybody else's right to speak. I think that she'll be fair. I think she's principled. As I say, I wouldn't agree with her, nor she with me, but, you know, I wish her well, and I hope it will be a good... She says she wants to represent everyone in the country, and I think she will do her best to do it.
Well said indeed. Dana, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. We're going to listen to Cold, Cold Christmas now, and thank you for coming on with us. Can I wish you and yours a very happy Christmas indeed, Dana, as well.
Oh, thank you. It's always lovely to talk to you, and to all your listeners, a very happy and a blessed Christmas.
Thanks, Dana. Good morning to you. Bye-bye to you now. Let's have a listen to that, a reimagined version of Cold, Cold Christmas.
According to the radio, warmer weather's on the way. Chances are we won't be getting snow. But even if the sun shines from now to Christmas Day, as far as I'm concerned, I know it's gonna be a cold, cold Christmas without you. Dreaming of those warm, lazy summer days. It's gonna be a long and lonely Christmas without you. Missing you, my darling, in oh so many ways.
That's lovely Donna there, and celebrating the 50th anniversary of what was a big hit for her back in 1975, reimagined version there of Cold, Cold Christmas, and we wish her well. She's a pure dote, and it's always a pleasure to chat to her.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tip today on 1-800-938-007.
We spoke to Aidan Farrelly from the Soc Dems earlier on about his private members bill, wanting a referendum, I suppose, to reduce the voting age to 16. But Brian was on and he says, Fran, the politicians are pushing for 16-year-olds to vote because it's easier to influence and manipulate their choice. They're still mainly in education, and as we all know, with influence of NGOs in the education system, they have a seriously detrimental influence on students' outlook in many cases. At 16, there's a whole host of activities that they're prevented from indulging in because of ability to influence them negatively. So, no, they should not get a vote, in my opinion, says Brian. But Aidan Farrelly making the point, you see, that 16-year-olds now, they can work and pay tax and provide care to loved ones and indeed consent to medical treatment and all of that. And so therefore, maybe they should have the right to vote as well. Anyway, I would imagine that it's a conversation that will go on. On the programme tomorrow, you heard the announcement earlier on that Pascal Donoghue is stepping down to take a big job indeed. And that job intrigues me. In fact, the title of the job is Managing Director and Chief Knowledge Officer at the World Bank. I'd love to, I have to tease that out later, but Chief Knowledge Officer as well. So anyway, we're going to have a look at his career along with Fionn Sheehan tomorrow on the programme. We'll be hearing from Deputy Matty McGrath. And the most important part of tomorrow is we're going to talk about Udder Mint and what it is and what it does. And I assure you, it's going to be very interesting. That's it for me. Leanne produced, Ellie looks after content. Stephen has the time tunnel on the Lunchtime Show, and I'll talk to you soon. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.